Welcome back to the 7-Day video series where I walk you through the blueprint you can use to achieve fast success with easy to implement steps. I'm Lenny Richardson, the founder of Productivity Accelerator, and today I'm going to walk you through how to structure your day effectively. In the previous video, I showed you how to prioritize effectively. This video will be a bit different as I demonstrate the exact means of structuring your day from start to finish in order to achieve success. I'll be using an AI-generated avatar based on a former client of mine to illustrate how you should be structuring your day and the exact process I'd recommend using to do so. While watching this video, consider how you'd apply these steps into your own daily routine. Hope you enjoy.
We're going to learn more about who Alex is, what his goals are, what he hopes to accomplish. We're going to deconstruct all of his problems, and we're going to figure out, using the various principles that I help people with, we're going to figure out how we can help him achieve his goals, or at the very least, help him move closer to his goals. So let's jump into that. So about Alex. 36 years old, he's an entrepreneur and the owner of Z Corporation. He wants to write a book for personal brand, but struggles to make time for it. He wants to double his revenue and profit in the next year, ideally. He desires more time to do a minimum of 2 date nights a month with his wife, and he feels stretched thin from too many projects. He wants more time for personal time and hobbies. Now, as far as his current schedule, he usually wakes up around 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. He has no specific wake up time. Now, before we even get into the actual steps on how we can kind of help him, the first thing that comes to mind and the first thing I always recommend to every client I have and to everyone I have any interactions with that want help on time management is to set a definitive wake up time. You should not have sort of a loose wake up time. You should have at least an idea of what time you'd like to wake up and what time you'd like to go to bed. Now, of course, in the real world, things are going to happen and you might not, say, for example, if you want to go to bed at 10 p.m., things might happen and you might get to bed at 10:30 p.m. or 10:15 p.m. or maybe 11 p.m. or even 11:30. Totally understand. But it's setting that sort of time to wake up and go to bed that almost creates a certain sense of urgency throughout the day. It kind of helps you dictate when you should be up and gives you an idea of how much time you can dedicate each and every day to different tasks and activities. And it helps you figure out basically how long something should take. It creates a sense of urgency. That's kind of the main takeaway from setting a wake up time and a bedtime. So the very first thing I'd recommend before we even get into the specifics, this is just kind of me off the top of my head, going through his schedule and giving my 2 cents. I'd set a definitive wake up time and a definitive bedtime. Now, Alex wakes up after a restless night of sleep. He usually lacks a consistent morning routine. Again, this is something I would off the bat just fix. Now, real quick, I don't know if I have any notes on this, but when it comes to morning routines, and this is something I see a lot, clients I have, and just people in general that I kind of come in contact with, especially entrepreneur type people, there's this big thing where people make super excessive morning routines. But what I mean by that is, I don't know where it came from, but there's this idea that you have to have a very complicated morning routine. You need to wake up at 5 a.m. You need to take a cold shower, go for a run, come back, meditate for 30 minutes, do all kinds of brain exercises, do yoga for an hour. While all of those things are good, I think it's important to keep in mind that they need to contribute to your goal. Otherwise, they're not great activities for your morning routine. Now, first of all, for him, I would have a morning routine. But the thing is, it doesn't need to be a complicated morning routine. And that's the point that I think people kind of miss. People will spend hours doing this long-winded morning routine that doesn't contribute to their goals, when in reality, a very solid and a very effective morning routine could be wake up, grab coffee, eat breakfast, get to work. That is it. That's the morning routine. It does not need to be complicated, but what it does need to be is consistent and predictable. That is the thing that differentiates a good morning routine from a lousy morning routine. And I think probably on par with the lousy morning routine is just not having any routine at all. Okay, so the next thing, he skips breakfast in the rush to check emails and dive into work. Now, the breakfast thing, I'm not going to be super hung up on. Some people fast during the morning. I fast during the morning. I find that it's more efficient and more productive for me personally to skip breakfast and just get to work. If he wanted to have breakfast, that's something I would suggest he schedule in, or at the very least make sort of a little bullet that he should make time for. Next thing, late morning and early afternoon. Around that time, he juggles multiple projects simultaneously without clear priority. And I know we're going to get into this in the future, but setting priorities on different tasks that you have is key. You cannot have a productive day if you're just kind of juggling multiple activities and just kind of floundering around. And for a lot of people, before I kind of get on too much of a tangent, for a lot of people, they confuse activity with progress. And they think if I'm doing things, even if the things are adjacent to my goals, then I'm being productive. And this is not necessarily true. I had a client recently. His goal is to get more clients. He's a copywriter. His goal is to get more clients. And all he does is practice copy, which is fantastic. This is good. It's good to practice copy. But the issue that he sort of had, and this is kind of what we discussed during our client calls, is that he's practicing copy so much, he's neglecting the thing that'll get him client, which is outreach. He's doing something adjacent to his goals, which is practicing copy, but he's not doing the main thing that'll lead to him actually accomplishing his goals, which is outreach. So this is sort of kind of a similar scenario. It feels good sometimes to juggle projects. It feels like you're getting a lot of things done. It feels like you're making progress towards your goals, but in reality, chances are you're probably not making that much progress. And as we kind of get into Alex and his situation, I'll explain more about why he's not accomplishing much by doing these tactics. The next thing, he constantly shifts focus between tasks. He struggles to maintain concentration. He usually takes lunch around 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., grabs a fast food meal at the desk while multitasking on calls and meetings, continues to work into late hours. He rarely takes breaks for self-care. He avoids delegating tasks. This leads to a growing workload. Often commits to new projects or ideas that sound profitable or appealing, which leads to a growing list of projects to work on with no time to do them. Now, I'm just going to pause real quick. This is one of the biggest mistakes I see most people do when they're trying to be productive, especially if they're an entrepreneur or someone that can afford to outsource activities or delegate to someone else. No matter what, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, one of the worst things you can do is not delegate activities to other people or to other types of, say, for example, software, use tools, use other people to get more things done and to take the workload off yourself. So him not delegating is a massive mistake. And this is one of those mistakes that will guarantee you cannot be productive and you cannot grow, at least not at a fast or good pace. I'll put it that way. Maybe you can grow very slowly, but my belief is that most people probably don't want to grow slowly. Most people probably want to achieve a goal relatively quickly. If they can snap their fingers and achieve a goal, they probably would do it. So not delegating is a massive mistake, and it's just going to hurt him in the long run. And then as you can see, because he's not delegating, he's always getting new activities. So he's always getting new projects, new things that he could be doing. And the issue is that he can't do any of them effectively because he's not delegating. So his workload is always increasing, but he's not able to kind of take the metaphorical papers on his desk and toss them into the completed. He often works late into the night, sacrificing personal and family time, which I'm sure contributes to him having low quality sleep. He's probably working super late, probably super stressed out. He probably goes to bed right after he finishes working, and it probably eats away at his subconscious throughout the night and just doesn't help him get a good quality of sleep, which, by the way, kind of another side tangent, this is going to decrease the quality of your work in the long run. If you're always exhausted, if you're always tired, if you're always stressed out, you can work a long period of time, but you kind of get into that, you kind of sacrifice quantity for quality. He might work a long period of time throughout the day, but the work is so low quality if he's always stressed, if he's always burnt out, that a few hours of high quality work would outweigh the many hours of low quality. Does that make sense? And the thing to consider too is if you're doing a lot of hours of low quality work, not only are you decreasing your overall output, you're also hurting yourself in the long run because you can't enjoy the things in life that you want to enjoy. If he worked for 4 hours of high quality work, those 4 hours could be worth more than say 8 to 12 hours of low quality. And on top of that, because he freed up that additional, say 4 to 8 hours, he has 4 to 8 hours to do other things that he actually likes to do, which will likely make him a lot less stressed, a lot happier, a lot more fulfilled, which ultimately leads to more higher quality work, which leads to more progress, and it becomes a positive feedback. So I really hope that all makes sense. I really hope, I want you to keep that in mind. Sometimes it's not always about quantity. Sometimes the thing you really need to be productive is quality. And in this situation, it seems like he's lacking that quality. He goes to bed late, but sleep quality is poor due to stress and overload, of course. So this is kind of the main things that I would start with. If Alex were my client and we were talking on a call, this is the thing that we would kind of work on first. First things first, get a schedule. With every single client or every single case study that we'll go over, this is going to be the first thing I'd recommend. And it's the first thing I recommend with everyone because most of the people I see that aren't productive do not have a planner. They do not schedule their day. And if they do have a planner, it's not an effective plan. So the first thing I recommend everyone do is get a planner. As always, I have my own planner. It's free. You don't have to pay for it. You can just download it. It's a PDF, super simple, super straightforward. And there's also a video that shows you exactly how to use it. But even if you don't want to use my planner, I recommend the calendar app on most people's phone. If you have an Android or an iPhone, you have a calendar app on your phone. It's highly effective. I think it's super effective. You don't need my planner for that. Comes free with your phone. And if you want to buy a planner from the store, dollar stores have them. Doesn't matter. Any planner works, but the key thing to do is to get a planner. Next thing, make a list of all the consistent activities that he has. All of those projects that he said yes to, what he should do next is make a list of all of them, all of them, all of them. Make a list of all of them. And then from there, he needs to sit there and figure out which of these tasks are worthwhile? Which of these things will bring him closer to his goal of doubling his revenue by the end of the year? And I'm kind of getting a bit ahead of myself, but what I would also recommend is he should rank, because there are going to be some activities that will definitive double his revenue probably like tomorrow. I'm exaggerating, of course, but it quickly is the point that I'm getting at. And there are going to be some activities that might take a very long time to produce result. Just kind of and this is a little bit of a side, real kind of a conversation I had with someone recently, just between friends and just kind of spitballing back and forth. If you're starting a business, and this, I'm not a business expert, so this is just me giving my 2 cents, but it relates to this point here. If you were starting a business from scratch and you wanted to sort of get money quickly, the thing you probably need to do is get leads. And the most direct way to get leads, probably one of the most effective things, is direct outreach, especially if you don't have any money. Maybe if you have money, you could do paid ads, but let's assume you're just brand new, you have no money at all. The most effective thing you could do is just direct outreach to people asking, do you want my service or my product? And just getting money into the account. That's the most effective thing that will definitively help you get your income goal. If you're a new business, that's probably your goal, to make money. One of the things that I would say helps in the long run, but probably not in the short run, so it should be lower on your priority list in this situation, if metaphorically speaking, you're a new business owner, is doing SEO, is maybe starting a newsletter, maybe doing a lot of social media content. Those things I think are effective and I think they help, but I don't think they'll immediately lead to money. And if the goal is money sooner than later, then the top of the list should be, in my personal opinion, just my personal thoughts, direct outreach to potential clients or potential customers. Does that make sense? So and to kind of relate that to this 3-step approach, in Alex's situation, he needs to make a list of all the things that he believes will lead to the most progress for his goals. And in this point, because he's a business owner, he probably has an idea of the things he either has done or the things he wants to do that will probably lead to results that he desires. And then, of course, at the very bottom, have a definitive wake up and bedtime. I've already mentioned that, but it sounds small, but it's not small. It's key. You need to have a definitive wake up bedtime. Finally, put all of those things in his plan. So his planner at first should look like this. As you can kind of see on the right, all of that red spot, we have his definitive wake up time. Let's say it's 6 a.m. We have a block set aside for important tasks. These are the key tasks and projects that he will be doing from Monday through Friday that will definitive, or at the very least, there's a high probability that these things will help him increase his revenue, which seems to be his main goal. Then finally, around 10 p.m., he has a definitive bedtime. Now, like I said, some days he might wake up earlier than 6 a.m. and he might feel great. He might want to work earlier. It's totally fine. Some days he might wake up a little bit later. It's totally fine. But the good thing is that because he's planned his day out like this, he knows that if he wakes up later, it cuts into his productivity time, his time to do his important tasks. Now, if he's okay with that, then that's totally cool. If he's not okay with that, then the answer is simple. Adjust your sleep time so that way you can wake up early enough to start your work at 8. It's that straightforward. It's that simple. And then there's one more thing too, that I think when it comes to scheduling time to work that he should keep in mind. It's recommended that his work start time and the location are definitive and consistent. Now, from my personal experience, I think it's necessary to have a specific place where you work consistently. Back when I actively did real estate as an agent, whenever I didn't have a specific place to work, it always took away far more time than it needed to. I would spend literally like hours, like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, finding a place to do work. That right there, the idea of searching for a place to do work because you haven't really planned it out accordingly beforehand, kills all momentum. It's so disheartening that it almost kills the entire day. And sometimes if you kill one day, it could kill a week. Now, this whole idea of finding a definitive workplace is not that complicated. If he has an office space, like a commercial office space, it could be just as simple as having his office, just going to his office, sitting at his desk, and that's his definitive workspace. But if he has like a house or an apartment and he has a designated room where he has a desk, that could be his workplace. If he likes to kind of get up and maybe as part of his morning routine, he likes to grab a cup of coffee, his definitive work location could be Starbucks. Plenty of people work in Starbucks. It could be a co-working space. It all depends on what he wants and how he works. Some people like to work outdoors. Some people like to work indoors by themselves. Some people like to work indoors around lots of people. It depends. It just kind of depends on the individual. But what matters the most is that it's a definitive place. It's predictable and it's some place that's available whenever he needs it to be. That is also key. It needs to be available. When I did do real estate, I used to have my office. We had an office for real estate, and I used to make the office my definitive workspace. But the issue, and this is, I eventually changed having my office as the workspace, and I eventually started working from home for the most part. One of the things that I didn't like is that sometimes this specific office that I like to use kind of had a glass door that you can seal off. So you can see people and they can see you. But when the doors close, people are usually hesitant to kind of open it and start talking to you, which is what I liked because I didn't want to talk to people while I'm working. The issue is that it was a good office. This particular room was very good. And it was more of a first come, first serve scenario. So if someone else got there before me, I lost my definitive workspace. And if I lost my definitive workspace, I'd spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours finding a new one. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Make sure that the workspace is controlled by you. Like when I say definitive, I mean you shouldn't have to question if that workspace is available. It should always be available when you need. Now, the next thing, I'd also recommend Alex schedule specific call times and make a system so that meetings and calls take place at around the same time each day. I think, in my personal opinion, because he's an entrepreneur, what I tend to find people do that are entrepreneurs is they allow every phone call and they allow every meeting to be forced upon them. I've seen so many entrepreneurs sit there and they have a bunch of things that they want to do in a single day. But what happens is that every 5 or 10 minutes, someone calls. And every time someone calls, that breaks their focus. And they feel that they feel obligated to pick up the phone and answer the question. Sometimes you'll sit there as a business owner and the phone rings and it could be a spam call. It could be a marketing call. It could be someone that you work with, but they think that something is urgent, even though it's not urgent at all. It's not even that important, but they get nervous. They feel it's urgent. So they call you and you spend so much time handling their problems and handling every little meeting, every little phone call that you never actually get the main things done. This block of time from 8 to 4 p.m. is designated solely for the things that'll drive revenue solely. And these are the things that Alex alone, or at least Alex maybe with a small team or whatever, these are things that he's actively doing. This is not the time for little phone calls where an employee of his might have a small issue that they could probably figure out themselves. This is not the time for maybe a client that is not scheduled to talk at a certain time, but feels like they really should call. This is not the time to talk. This is the time to do work, definitive work that'll move the needle forward. The final thing is define what qualifies as an urgent call and meeting. Only accept those outside of call time. Now, again, back when I was doing real estate, one thing I saw a lot is people would often confuse, or I'll say this, people had their own idea of what urgent really meant. For most people, in my personal experience, urgent to them is I'm anxious and I don't want to be anxious anymore. So let me try to fix my anxiety by, say, calling my agent. I've had many phone calls at 6 a.m. People get anxious, they get nervous. Oh, I saw this house on Zillow and I really want to schedule a time to see it today. Meanwhile, as an agent, you understand that the house isn't available. It's not even on the market. It's coming soon or something. So the anxiety is not necessary. A simple email could have been enough. Or I've had many times where a client might call at, say, 8 p.m. or 11 p.m. because I don't know, they put it in an offer and they want to hear back. It's like, okay, when I hear back from the offer, which we just put in like 2 hours ago, when I hear back from the agent, I'll let you know, of course. Until then, don't be nervous about it. Don't be anxious. I get it. I get why you might be nervous. I get why you might be anxious, but it's not necessary right now. Does that make sense? So I find that, and I just find that people have their own idea of what's urgent. In this situation, what I would recommend Alex do is sit there, and whether it's maybe people he work with, we're not sure of the nature of his business, but if it's, say, contractors he works with, if it's clients he might work with, if it's his employees, or maybe it's even his close relationships like family, I would sit down and say to them, from 8 p.m. until 4 p.m., I'm working. Please do not call me. If you need something, text me or leave a voice and I'll get back to it when I have a chance. Otherwise, do not call unless it's urgent. And urgent, and I would specifically define to them what urgent is. Urgent is you are dying, or you got hit by a bus, or someone is robbing you, something like that. I know that sounds extreme, but the point that I'm making is that urgent needs to be well defined and it needs to actually be urgent. It can't be like someone's mildly anxious or someone has a slight problem, therefore they consider it urgent. That's not urgent. If you can put it off for more than 2 hours, this is just my general rule, it's not urgent. Does that make sense? If it's something that needs to be addressed this second, or else it's life-threatening or detrimental, or a whole building's going to fall apart, or the world's going to catch on fire, that is urgent. If that's not the case, and people need to be realistic, if that's not the case, it's not urgent. Put it to the side until his scheduled block of time to answer phone calls and to do meetings comes up. Does that make sense? So I know that was a very long point that I was stuck on, but it's something I see people face a lot. And I truly think that alone kills like so much of people's productivity, especially if you're a business owner or you're someone that's in sales or someone that has like their own side hustle. Allowing other people to dictate your time by having them tell you what's urgent, or at least what you should consider urgent, is it's gonna destroy you. Don't let it happen. Next thing, from this point, and I've said this already, but it's good to kind of reiterate this point. Alex should rank all of the other projects he has based on how likely and how quick they'll help him achieve his goal. Only the top 3 things should remain. Everything else should be abandoned or put on hiatus. He's probably going to have a bunch of tasks, as we kind of already went over, he says yes to a lot of things. All of those things he said yes to, again, he's going to rank them and prioritize. Anything below 3, he's going to remove or he's going to delegate to someone else to pretty much handle completely. He's only tacked the top 3 things. And really, depending on what those 3 things are, he should really be focusing on the first thing, because that first thing is going to be the thing that drives the most result. Later on, I'll go over this, but there's sort of this concept called the Pareto principle, 80-20 principle. You might have seen it also as. And basically what this principle dictates is that 80% of the results that you get come from 20% of the work, 20% of the effort. So for example, I'll give actually a quick story to kind of quickly illustrate this point. Years ago, I used to work at a law firm. When I first worked at a law firm, it's one of the tasks that I was given was to figure out how the law firm can make more money relatively quickly. Like, where's the money coming? And how do we work less as a law firm while earning at least the same, if not more, ideally more? And so what I did is I went through all of their closed cases over the past 10 years. And what I found is that the cases that had the highest payouts, and when I say high payouts, I mean like all of them were above $600,000 into the millions. All of the cases that had those payouts were cases that other people referred to the law firm. So they were basically referred. The cases that had, and they were also, by the way, the cases that were the easiest for the lawyers to handle. They required the least amount of time and the least amount of effort, and the clients were a lot more compliant because they were referred. They were friends of friends. The cases that did not return that much, cases that maybe gave the law firm $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, they were the cases that the lawyer spent the most time on by far, yet they paid the least amount of money, and the clients were the least compliant, which means that they were harder to work with. Does that make sense? They were more stress for the lawyers. In this situation, most of the effort to make the most money should be for the lawyers to just meet more people, because the more people they meet, the higher the chance that they'll get referrals from the people they meet. And as we've kind of seen based on the data, or at least based on what I saw based on the data, referred clients were the best client because they paid more and they were easier to work with and they closed faster. So you have speed, you have compliance, and you have more money. 3 things that all businesses want more of. So in this situation, and this is kind of paralleling Alex's business, with the law firm, what we started doing is we started having the lawyers just meet more people, go on more coffee dates, like meet more people, network more, because the networking is the thing that made the law firm the most money. Now in this situation, Alex might have a similar situation where he eventually comes up and finds out that there's about 1 to 3 things that really make the most money for his business. It's like, cool, once we find those 3 things, or once we really find that one main thing, double down, triple down, quadruple down on that one thing, or those top 3 things, because those are the things that'll make the most money for your business, and they probably require the least amount of overall effort, especially if you're doing like 20 things. Why do 20 things when you can just do 1 to 3 things? Does that make sense? So that will be the next thing at least I would recommend Alex do. Final thing, block out a time at night for other goals like writing. This can be once a week to 5 times a week, depending on the urgency. And again, I'd put that in the planner. Remember, one of Alex's other goals was to write a book for brand. Books don't write themselves. He needs to take some time out of his day to actually write the book. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole process of writing a book. This could be like outlining the research, depending on the nature of the book. But the main thing he needs to consider is that he just needs to write the book. He's got to sit down and spend some time writing the book. This can't be done haphazard. He's not going to sit there. He's not always going to feel like writing a book. He's going to have to block out time, and during that time, make an active effort to write the book, no matter how bad the words on the page come out. Does that make sense? And so this means that he needs to have a time throughout the day where he stops doing his main business. He needs to block out time at night for goals like writing. He needs to block out time at night to sit there and do this type of work. Now, I put as a little kind of side note, this can be done once a week or 5 times a week, depending on the urgency. If Alex wants to write a book, say within the next 3 years, then maybe once a week is plenty. Maybe 2 times a week or 3 times a week. Maybe that's plenty. If Alex wants to write a book within the next 6 months, then 5 times a week, maybe even 7 times a week might actually be the better move, because maybe he feels that book is the thing that's going to launch his business to the next level. Maybe he thinks that that book is going to elevate his brand to the point where he wants it to be. If that's the situation, if that's the case, he needs to be working on that book a lot, 5 times a week, 6 times, 7 times. Hopefully that all makes sense. Now, once he does this, this is the way his planner should look. Again, there's only a few activities that are likely producing results. He should only be focusing on those few activities. And if the remaining, say 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 ranked activities, if he still feels like they're necessary or at least highly conducive to him generating a high revenue, I would outsource those. I'd find his assistant, or I'd find an assistant, or I'd find some AI tools, or I'd find some virtual assistant, someone. I'd find someone and something else and outsource it to them to do. I'd let them take it over. Because the reality is that he can't do everything all at once. He's one individual. He cannot do 1,000 things at once. It's not sustainable. He's going to burn out, which is going to hurt the quality of his business, or he's going to do the work poorly, which is also going to hurt the quality of his business. Either way, he's losing by trying to do everything by himself. As you can see also in the red, there's a small block of time solely for calls and meetings. It should say call times / meeting times, but you can see call times, same thing. Call times, meeting time. Again, he should set a clear boundary telling people that from 2 to 4 is when they can reach him for calls and for meetings. If someone needs a meeting with him, and this could be anyone, this could be contractors, businesses he works with, if they want to meet with him, if they want to do a phone call, whatever, 2 to 4 is the time to do it. And I'd recommend he stay hardcore on that boundary. Obviously, if it's, again, I know I'm repeating myself, but it's worth reiterating. Obviously, if it's urgent, take the call. Don't let it be long, but take the call. Take the meeting if it's urgent. If not, let it happen from 2 to 4. Next thing, Alex at this point should schedule 2 times a month or more for date night. Remember, that was one of his other goals. He wants to have more personal time and more time for dating with his wife. If Alex needs to feel productive, he can block off 2 to 3 hours in the morning on the weekends to work and have date nights for the remainder of the day. Those weekends he has pretty much free, at least based on the way I would recommend he organize his planner. His weekends are relatively free. Now, I know some people, and this is true for myself, like to feel productive 7 days a week. If that is the case for him, he can always work in the morning. He can always wake up relatively early and just work in the morning for several hours straight, focused. And then for the entire rest of the day, that's plenty of time to give his wife all the attention she needs to maintain the relationship, to go on those date nights, whatever it is that they feel is necessary. He now has the time to do while also feeling productive and while also being objectively productive. That's the key thing. Next part, he should try to group similar activities together to make them easier to accomplish. For example, and we've kind of already gone over this, he should try working on calls back to back. He should also try to do meetings back to back, and focus heavy projects he should also be doing back to back. So during that original block of time from, I think it was 8 to 2, I believe that was the time. If there are some things that require him to just kind of sit there and to sit at his computer and just kind of grind something out, any similar grinding type activity should be done back to back. Phone calls back to back, meetings back to back. The final thing, he should have necessary conversations to guarantee everyone is on the exact same page. And of course, everything should be added to the planner. Now, once that's done, this is what his planner is going to look like. He has times blocked off for writing, as you can kind of see at the bottom. He sort of has from 7 a.m. until about 9 p.m., 2 solid hours, 5 days a week to write. And if he wants to write on the weekends too, maybe in the morning, on Saturday and Sunday, early in the morning, he can take 2 hours or more, whatever, or less to write. Plenty of time to write. Depending on the urgency, some days can be removed. He's running a company. Some things might come up that just shoot to the top of his priorities. That's totally fine. He can always put off writing for a day or two or however long it needs to take to get that urgent thing done. The key thing is to understand what is truly urgent and to make sure that it gets done as quickly as possible, but also as efficiently as possible, so that way he can go back to his normal routine. And I mentioned this already, but as you can see, there's still a lot of white space in his planner, especially on the weekends and especially after his call times. Plenty of time for personal activities, for date nights, whatever. He has plenty of time now. And again, depending on how chaotic things are, depending on how many projects he might have, he could also be flexible. Maybe he doesn't have to do date night every Saturday and every Sunday. Maybe it can be every other Saturday and every other Sunday. Maybe it's just Saturdays, only Saturdays, four times a month. Maybe it's only Sundays. Maybe it's only Saturdays and Sundays, but those 2 days he does twice per month. So the other 2 weekends, he has completely free to do whatever he wants, to work, whatever. If work is a functional requirement for his immediate progress, then time can be scheduled on the morning. And we've already gone over this, but as you can see, there's so much space on his Saturday and Sunday mornings where he can just get more stuff done. And then his final planner is going to look something like this. Plenty of time for flexibility and to work on anything that comes up. All of that red space is free time. He's got free time on the weekends. He's got free time after he dedicates time to working on his book, if he chooses to do that on specific days, and even has about an hour free time before his bedtime, assuming he goes to bed at 10. If he goes to bed at 11, then he has 2 hours of free time. The weekends can act as a buffer to handle any activities, tasks, or writing that he couldn't get done during the week. And then finally, it's also important to keep in mind that the wake up and bedtime can be adjusted, and not every day might be a day filled with calls or meetings. And that's one thing to keep in mind, because people always say that if you live by this planner, your day is too structured, it's too rigid, there's no flexibility. And I would actually disagree. Even though he has activities like, say, for example, 2 to 4, he has call times and meeting times scheduled, there's a reality that he just might not have a meeting or a call that he needs to take. He could go a whole week and there might not be a necessary meeting. There might not be a necessary call. He might have outsourced it to someone else. Maybe he can outsource someone attending the meeting and just writing notes, and they give him the notes and he reviews them after the meeting, maybe in the morning, and that's it. So now he freed up all of that time during the week to do other stuff, to write, to get more of the high productivity activities done. Whatever, it could be whatever he wants. But that's the thing I want people to understand, is that this is just basically a guideline to how you, or in this case Alex, should spend his day. He doesn't have to do this every single day, but at the very least, if he wants to figure out what he should be doing every day, it's already outlined for him. There's no guesswork, there's no thinking about it, there's no confusion, there's no disorientation. It's all there, outlined for him in a way that's guaranteed to help him get results. The final key ideas to take away: Alex's main struggle will be communicating boundaries to others. When it comes to calls, meetings, questions, etc., a lot of this comes down to expressing a boundary and sticking to it. Alex should implement the Pareto principle. He should find the most productive projects based on prior experience or good rationality and focus on doing these few activities most of the time. Finally, he should make time to enjoy life with his family and friends. Chances are he's not leaving that much progress on the table by working slightly less. And as I mentioned earlier, if anything, he might actually be hurting his productivity by working too much. It's quality over quantity. As long as he's focusing on the most important things, he'll still make progress. Final thoughts: in real life, problems always arise, and life is never simple enough to remain constant forever. As I've said before, and as you'll continue to see as you go through each of these different AI case studies, this is just the information that was given by AI at that time that I requested it. In real life, as you kind of conquer one problem, another problem is sure to come. That is just how life works. And because of this, the strategies that I would give people as a time management coach, as a productivity coach, would always be shifted, would always be fluid. So my usual goal is to help you work through those shifts in life that may deter you from your goals and productivity. And as always, if you're ever interested in learning more, there's always a link. You'll see a link somewhere, just kind of based on where you're watching this, you'll see a link that will allow you to book a free 1-hour session where I will do my absolute best in that 1 hour to go through all the problems that you have and work out a concrete and objective plan to help you get from point A to point B with as little time, with as little stress, and with as little effort as humanly possible. But hope you enjoyed this presentation. I will see you in the next one. We're going to be talking about Emily.
I hope you enjoyed this video and got a lot out of it. Remember that how you structure your day has a dramatic impact on your daily success. Be sure to implement the steps I used in this video into your own life. Now, in the next video, I'll be covering a common barrier to success and something that's plaguing nearly everyone in the modern era. In the next video, I'll share with you how to take back your focus.